Okay, we get started. Oh, oh.
Only I can't hear, or others also cannot hear?
You cannot
Faint.
hear?
It's faint.
It's faint?
Yeah, even I cannot hear. I kept increasing my volume.
Oh, okay. Let me
Nice.
check. Let me check my volume.
Now we could, when you
Now
talk,
we-
I can hear.
Now you can hear well? Is it clear?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, very good. Good. Oh, oh, oh. ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहैः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्ततामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीं नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचानूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वा सर्वपापेभ्यः मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. So Hari Om everyone. So now we are in that part of the chapter 11 where Arjuna is asking for the Vishwarupa Darshanam. And we know from the past few shlokas where when we think about Vishwarupa Darshanam, it actually involves two things. One is, our regular eye by which we see this whole world which we call as Vishwam, and that's why Vishwarupa Darshanam. So Vishwam, but then there is another eye that we really need by which we can actually see this entire universe not as fragmented as we are seeing now. Today we see everything as separate, separate, separate. Whether it's the trees, whether it's human beings, everything we see it as separate. And this is because we are seeing it only through our regular eyes. But we need this other eye, which is the Divya Chakshu, we say. Chakshu means the vision, by which we see this entire universe as nothing but Ishvara. To see this world, we require this very, very ordinary eyes. Okay? But to see this world as a manifestation of that Ishvara, we actually require a special eye, a special attitude, which is really out of the seventh, eight chapters that we read through so far. So that has really opened our eyes to know that this eyes alone is not enough. We need this Divya Chakshu. And that is why, we give all these examples in the Bhagavatam and our Ramayana, where it sees, for example, Kamsa, right? Kamsa continuously he sees Krishna only by his physical eyes because he really doesn't have that Ishvara Darshanam, you know. But then you see all these gopis and everyone, they see Krishna very differently, right? So, why and how can we also develop this kind of an eye? What is it that we need to do for this? And that is why I think in our reflections, I want to continue with the last two classes, where we see that ultimately the reason we see this world is because we see the world by the objects. Okay. And those objects are the ones which define who we are. Okay. We define ourselves, we take up an identity based on everything that the what we have. Okay. So we really do not focus on the importance of who I am and how I am looking at this world. Okay. And in order to look at this world differently now, the focus has to shift. The focus shifts from all the external world slowly and slowly to me. And how do I start to think about that it is I who is seeing the world? Okay. For that, I really need to change my perception. And that is what we are talking about in this as the preparedness of the mind. So we have to prepare our mind to see the world differently. Okay. So this is why we said Ishvara Darshanam actually requires a very different kind of an eye. And that eye actually, we can say it needs to be developed. But actually, in reality, we already have that eye. But the reason we don't have that eye is, what do you think is why we don't have that eye? What should we do to develop that eye?
Focus inward.
Focus inward, true. But now, today, correct, we can afford to focus inward. But why are we not focusing inward?
Because
Hariom,
we
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Geeta, finish your thought.
Get attracted to outside world.
We are attracted because our mind, our eyes are constantly looking outside. In Kathopanishad also, Shreyas and prayers, all those concepts, they're basically telling us that our mind has been trained from when I'm a baby, I'm training my mind to look outside. And now it is becoming even worse because as a baby, I'm already giving the baby a phone in the hand or an iPad to see things uh, through this virtual reality. What we are saying, we are training our mind so much, right? Yeah. Anant, what did you want to say?
Hariom, yeah, I mean, we only look in the transaction world and then we interact with the, transaction world. Again, it depends on so many factors. But again, that's how we grow up until at some point, we have to go through satsang and through, knowledge and so many going through texts and, and then with the God's grace. That's always a factor.
Correct. So,
Then, we open the Jnana Chakshu, or it's
uh-huh.
also called the third eye in many of the texts. So, yeah.
So you mentioned satsang, you mentioned grace, and you mentioned a third different point which will take us inward. Correct? What is the third one you said? Satsang.
Going through the texts,
Going through Shastras.
shastras.
Shastras, going to the Guru. And in Viveka Chudamani, in the first few shlokas itself tells you about, that aspect of it in Mundaka Upanishad. There is an aspect on how to approach the teacher. All that is true. But still, why are we not going inward? You know, what if we were to go inward? There is, are we, what, uh, maybe the benefits of going inward is not very clear for us, correct? Ultimately, we will go towards something only if I know there is something in it for me, correct?
Right.
And
And also our vasanas, that could be one the reason.
our vasanas are acting as a block, correct? But still, how come we have so many people, listening to it, listening to Gita? What made us look inwards? Yeah, Meena?
Yeah, Hari Om. Yeah, what I wanted to say was nowadays, we all do multitasking, and our mind is always wavering mind. Like you do something, and then, before you even finish that, your mind goes to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always like, pondering, like wavering mind, and we are not able to concentrate on it, though we try to do some yoga or something like that, but
Mm-hmm.
we cannot control our mind to
Correct.
one thing. So we have though we are studying, we are into 11th chapter now, but still I would say, I mean, the day one when you started and after the 11th chapter, maybe point some percent increase, that's it. Point some, I won't even say 1%. So it is like that, because if we keep thinking too much, and we want to, I mean, it keeps pondering over from one thing to the other.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be one of the reasons.
It is. In fact, that is why I wanted to put it up here. Ultimately, it is the purity of the mind. You mentioned quite a few things with regard to the mind. My mind is going in different directions. My mind is multitasking. My mind is not focused. Ultimately, it is only that. It is the focus, and it is, uh, again, that is one part of it, purity of mind. In Vivek Chudami, again, there's so much of the mumukshutvam. I need to tell my mind that my goal today, for example, is not just the small, small things that I'm looking in the world, but I need to tell the mind that there is a bigger goal I need to go towards. But in order to convince the mind of the bigger goal, I have to first, in my mind, be very clear on what that goal will bring for me. Okay. So it's a whole different way of looking at things. Unless I know I have to clean my mind, unless I know what my goal is, unless I refine my goals, and then I recognize that this goal is going to give me the same happiness which today I'm trying to get in all these small subjects, in small objects, then and only then will my mind become refined, you know. And slowly, then I start to, as Anant was saying, the vasanas. Then I need to recognize in my mind, I have this vasana. Right now we actually do not even know what vasanas we have because we're so much into the vasanas and we're allowing the mind to continually, habitually be affected by those vasanas that I don't even know I have these vasanas. You know, so there is so much we need to do to purify this mind before I can even say that my mind is clear enough to see that Ishwar Darshanam. So ultimately, that later Krishna will say that what is Divya Chakshu? Divya Chakshu is not just something that Arjuna is given for that momentary time. For that few minutes, actually, Krishna gives Arjuna a completely, he just takes away all the dirt out of his mind and makes his mind so pure that Arjuna is now able to see the world as a manifestation of the Lord. Previously, he saw that old fragmentation, which was because his mind was fragmented. Now he
How about
thinks,
Sanjaya?
huh?
Sanjaya?
Sanjaya too. So Sanjaya actually sees the same thing.
Same.
Sanjaya is able to see what is happening in Arjuna's mind. So Sanjay is also given that vision of purity of the mind, which is the Divya Chakshu.
Hari Om,
Yes, Meena.
can you explain in detail what Divya Chakshu means, please?
So, if you read chapter 11 and everything, right?
Mm,
It'll and when you listen to lectures, and they will say that okay, Arjuna was given the special eye to see
mm,
to see Krishna as a manifestation of the entire universe. So, in Krishna's body, in fact, the shlokas which you will see today, you will
mm,
see more and more about how in Krishna's body, Arjuna is able to see the whole world, right?
mm, 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 mm.
Earlier, he actually saw Krishna as part of the world, but he's
Okay.
able to see that. Now,
Within
Krishna,
himself.
right. Now,
Mm,
Krishna, for that moment of time, he tells him, because Arjuna is really struggling so much to understand that this world is nothing but a manifestation of Ishvara. So Krishna actually, for that second, gives him the vision, okay? Gives him that, it's almost like, this kaleidoscope, right? I mean, I'm seeing the world as something fragmented. Suddenly, I'm given this kaleidoscope through which I'm able to see how the world is nothing but all these. Again, I have a beautiful picture of how it's nothing but electron, protons, and neutrons. They're all coming together in different forms and shapes. That's all the whole world is. So,
mm,
Krishna, for 1 second, actually gives him that, takes away the entire dirt out of Arjuna's mind and makes it so clean that Arjuna is now able to see. And that is truly the deeper meaning of that Divya Chakshu.
mm.
Okay.
Okay.
So, on a superficial level, we can say that Krishna just gave some magic to Arjuna. Okay.
Oh,
And
mm,
Arjuna was able to see the whole world. After
mm,
that, he took the magic out, and then Arjuna fell back to, everything. Just like how, for example, when I'm using the dream in a different context now. Previously, we've used dream in as how it is nothing but Maya. So,
mm,
in some sense, when we go to sleep, I see this entire world, and then I fall into some deep sleep where there is absolutely nothing, right? Uh, so imagine that kind of a scene where Krishna has given Arjuna that ability to see now the whole world, and then he takes it away from him. But that is Divya Chakshu on a superficial level, but on a deeper level, he basically shows Arjuna how, with a pure mind, a jnani would see the entire world.
mm. Okay.
Okay, so that is Divya Chakshu.
Hari
Thank
Om.
you so much.
Hari Om,
Yes,
is it
Sanita?
also called the Jnana Chakshu in
Yeah, you
some
can
other
call it
texts?
Jnana Chakshu. You can even call it the third eye. Third eye, of course, the minute we say third eye, it probably refers to Shiva's third eye when we say it open, when he opens, the world is gone. But there is, of course, somewhat you can relate it to it. But here he just calls it Divya Chakshu, the divine eye. And so,
Right, right.
in some way, indicating also that we all are none other, we are a divine being in our own self, but we are not able to realize. So, for 1 second, Krishna is basically giving Arjuna the ability to know that he's divine, and so he can actually see. He can actually see the world.
Right. And also, you're referring, removing the impurities.
Correct.
The Bhagavan in one of the slokas, another chapter says, Mamamaya Durandaraha.
Mama
So,
Maya Duratyaya.
yeah, so like, one won't able to pass through the Maya, and then the solution is to bow to him.
Correct.
Mame Veshyati,
Ambeya.
so
Correct.
one who bows to him and one who prays to him, then the Maya will be removed.
Correct. Correct.
Sunitha,
So,
I have a question.
yes, Usha.
So how do you qualify a pure mind? What is the gold standard for a pure mind? When you say pure mind, what exactly are we? Mind, according to me, is like a flow of thoughts or whatever. So, you know, so
Yeah.
so is it cessation of thought, or what exactly are we saying here?
So in fact, I mean, I'm so glad you brought, I'm just going to read something I sent to Shobha, our Shobha, just 2 days ago, because I saw something on Tapon Prasad, which was so beautiful. And I'm just going to read that out to you so that way, just to, for your, this is, somebody asked Swami, that is our Swami Chinmananda, Gurudev, as to what determines the quality of thoughts. And I'm just reading that, which I sent to her, okay? Because it answers your question on what is really purity of mind, you know? So when we talk about thoughts, we just say that it is a flow, okay? A flow of thoughts is what constitutes a mind, right? But then we have to question, what is a thought? You know, what is really this mind, which we never be able to ever get to it, even by dissecting a body or anything through any kind of physical means, it's not going to do it. So what is that mind? So the mind, of course, is one thought going after the other, but what is a thought? So thought itself, actually, it belongs to the field of matter. That's what Gurudev says, you know. But it belongs to the world of subtle matter. So in Tattva Bodh, for example, if you read, you know, it talks about beautifully what is a gross world, what is a subtle world. And the gross world and the subtle world are tied to each other because they come from the same elements of matter called tanmatra. Okay. So this tanmatra is there for all of us in the either form of gross world or the subtle world. Okay. Now, when this tanmatra, subtle matter, is vitalized by prana, that's when it becomes really a thought flow or the mind. Okay. So, and anything that moves which has direction, when it is vitalized by prana, it becomes a thought flow, the mind. This my phone is not acting up. Anything that moves the direction of this is so also when thoughts move, they move in the direction of your tendencies, whether you like it or not. So the what makes this thought move now? Okay. So as we defined earlier, thought is nothing but the subtle form of the tanmatra. Okay. But what is it that is making it move is actually our tendencies or vasanas. Okay. And our mind tends to move only in the direction of its vasanas. And that is how the whole mind as a entity comes into existence. Otherwise, actually, there is no mind at all. So if we look into it that way, now ultimately when I'm sorry I'm going so deep into it, or you just triggered something for me, Usha.
Go ahead.
That is, now you can see there is actually, for a thought to get into a flow and to form a mind, there has to be a vasana which is directing that flow of thoughts. So a mind that is free of vasanas would be then called as a refined mind. And when that mind is so pure, there is actually the entire world itself, quote unquote, disappears. What do we mean by that? Basically, our perception of the mind, or I'm sorry, our perception of the world is now disappears. And because my mind itself has not created a division is created in our mind again because of our vasanas. Our vasanas dissects this thought flow into so many different directions. And that is why that also this multitasking, all this happens. But when the mind is very clear, that completely brings about a decessation of your thoughts. And at that mind, it is one with the world, and you entirely see this world as nothing but a homogeneous form, not as a heterogeneous form. That is what this mind is doing. So ultimately, it is our mind that is really creating this perception on how we look at this world.
I have a question.
Does that, before you come to the question, Geeta, Usha, does that help?
Not really, sorry.
Okay,
Uh,
what part
yeah.
of it?
Because I'm still trying to grasp what exactly do we mean by pure mind? Like how can we not have thoughts? How can we not? I mean, thoughts are just, like to me, I can just watch my thoughts like going like a train. If I hop on the train in that particular compartment with a thought and I'm engaging with it, that's not the right thing to do. But just let the thoughts go by, because thoughts are never going to stop. That when you're saying it's going to stop and you see the whole world as a homogeneous one, to me is like, when will I even get to that state? Or even if I get to that state, how long will I be in that state? It's like, it's like the excited state and you have to come back to ground state. So you're never going to last long in that kind of a state. So is this ever going to happen? And is this, that's where I'm thinking about. That's what I'm thinking about.
My question was same.
Great. Great. When it ever happened. It actually, it does happen, Usha, by uh, the the practical way in which we do with our mind, with our world too, is when can I really focus my mind in leaving out all the unwanted stuff from what my mind is used to today, you know? And this being the new year, we always talk about, what are the things that I can just clean up my own house. So here we're cleaning up a house of our mind. In my mind, can I start making certain a list of all the unwanted things that I can afford to give up? That would be the simplest way where I would get to the purity of mind.
What happens to the effect of vasanas?
The effect of vasanas is reason why we are multitasking. For example, it is the effect
No,
of the
how do we erase? How do we erase that vasana? I know we can
First-
erase. Okay.
Right. First of all, we recognize that I have this particular vasana. It starts with recognition of that vasana. I mean, simple thing is, even though we keep giving this example of coffee and everything, but so long as I can have this coffee and when I don't have the coffee also, I'm okay with it. If I can come to a grip of it, I understand that I'm not controlled by the vasanas. Right? So point is, I have to think to myself, are my vasanas controlling me or I'm in control of the vasanas? The more and more I get to a point where I'm in control of the vasanas, that is a point where I'm becoming stronger and stronger. I'm not allowing this vasana to change the tendencies of the flow of thought.
Can we control the vasanas?
Of course, 100%, 100%. We can. In fact, very fact that we are listening to Bhagavad Gita where we could be doing some other things indicates that I have a stronger vasana for Bhagavad Gita, which is allowing me to listen to something different.
Harvom,
Just one quick thing, Anant, I want to mention.
Okay.
Vivekananda's birthday just got over, and I remembered about how he was able to focus his mind. It's only by the focus from many, many thoughts, bringing it to one thought or lesser number of thoughts is some way this control of your vasanas, When I'm able to control my vasanas, there's very few things that will disturb my mind. Yeah, Anand?
Yeah, is another way of refining the mind and controlling thoughts is it ananya sintayanto mam ejana paripaste tesham ichhabhiktaram yogakshemam vahamyam. So like on as a single pointedness or a single thought, or
Dedicating
so
all action.
dedicating all our thoughts and actions to Bhagavan.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the way of looking at the solution?
That is definitely also the biggest way. But first, I have to be convinced that there is somebody called God. And then I direct everything as a Ishwararpanam, you know. Um, the minute I start to say that everything, God is controlling this, God is controlling that, and it brings such a peace in the mind. So, yes, that is definitely one major thing. But it also goes back to this chapter 11, where I recognize that this entire world is just a manifestation of the Lord. And if the good and bad that is coming to me is also because I'm part of this whole Maya. Sometimes things work out, sometimes things don't work out. But I recognize that I'm just part of the Maya. Uh, the real self of me is beyond this Maya, right? And when I do that, then I start to surrender myself. That surrender happens very naturally.
Hari Om. So in order to get to this level, our mind should be first prepared. Is that correct?
The mind should
We
be
have to
prepared.
prepare our
Yes,
mind
correct.
and make sure we keep everything calm, we keep ourselves calm. Only then we can get into all these levels.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of bring that aspect of, so far we've been talking about Divya Chakshu, Divya Chakshu, but what is a Divya Chakshu? Is nothing but the purity of mind. That is what we need to clearly understand. So for that one few seconds, Krishna basically took away all the confusions out of Arjuna's mind so that he can now see the world as is. And that's what in shlokas 5, 6, and 7, 8, we saw, with Krishna telling him about, first, so now you start to see me as the hundred and thousands of forms, and then he starts to explain about all um, the most powerful forms, which is all the suns, the Adityas, Vasus, Ashwinis, Maruthas. And then this is the part where he says, which is how the whole universe is actually beyond the fragmentation that I'm seeing, that today I'm seeing. I see the world as fragmented, and here, he's trying to say that go beyond this fragmentation. And, so this shloka 7, and then in 8, he says finally that, okay, I can show you this by giving you this Divya Chakshu. And then you see Sanjaya's, words, which we started to see last time, where Sanjaya is now replaying that Vishwarupa he starts to describe and everything. So, this, in some sense, you can see as a kind of a welcome interruption in this narrative by Krishna to Arjuna, because, uh, Arjuna is still sort of reeling with the information that Krishna is giving him. And so the scene is now shifted to Hastinapura, and then you see, where Sanjay is now telling, and he even calls. Now you see where Krishna is now shown as a avatar of Vishnu. So the word Harihi here basically is trying to say that Krishna is none other than that Lord Vishnu, the Vishwarupa Ishvara. So that is the use of the word this, and then he uses one more descriptive here, which is Mahayogeshwaraha, that is one who is beyond uh, beyond everything. So that is Yogeshwara. And then in shlokas 10 and 11, he basically sketches a broad outline of what he wants to cover step by step. He gives, all the things that Krishna is trying to show, the vastness of the whole of the whole world. So that's why 10 and 11 and 12 almost, they're all together, which now Sanjay is describing to the king about, what Arjuna is seeing uh, in in Krishna. So what is he seeing? Which is, he sees huge number of mouths and ears, eyes, and great sights. and this Divya Abharanam, and then the great the divine weapons, and then he sees the divine garlands, and then he sees the divine perfumes. Everything, everything is like superlative things that he's using out here, in all this. And then finally in the last shloka, which we saw last time, which is the Divya Surya Sahasrasya. So I mean, he's really desperately, Krishna is trying to give Arjuna the highest form of himself. And the closest that he can come to is, really the sun. And he says, just like the sun has such a brilliance. Now imagine if there were 1,000 suns, even then the brilliance would not be equal to what uh, his brilliance is. That's what he's trying to come in all over here. So this is where we finally ended up, finishing it, or that it's a Surya. And he's trying to say that even if so many suns were to rise up simultaneously, not one by one, but simultaneously, then even then, it would not really compare to the extent of his brilliance. So that was where we finished. So from shloka number 13, we see how he's trying to, in fact, 13 is probably the last of the set of shlokas here, where he's saying, so Arjuna is now kind of overwhelmed by the sheer kind of vastness of Ishvara's form, right? There's so much going on here. There's so many shapes, so many forms, that, I'm sure Arjuna is like totally confused. Where do I look? Everywhere he just sees all these forms, and like, I guess again, as a simple example, I'm just thinking, when we go to the movie theater, right? We see so many shapes and forms and everything's of the whole story of the movie, which is projected on the screen, right? But then what happens? At some point, we forget that there is a screen and we get so engrossed in this whole thing. But ultimately, it is nothing but a projection on that screen, right? So think about it that way. So that is how Krishna is also trying to show here. He's saying ultimately it's just me alone. In me, all these forms are nothing but projected. you know so he sees in that. So he's telling Arjuna that, and Arjuna is now seeing that entire universe with the earth, sky, all this, in that one particular screen. So that vastness is how, he's captured. And in some sense, you can see in Bhagavatam, right, where you see Yashoda at one point when Krishna has his mud in his mouth, and she asks him to open the mouth. And what does she see there? That is a Divya Chakshu also, right? So Yashoda is able to see in Krishna's mouth that entire universe, that Ishvara form. So again, showing the purity which is needed in order for us. So Sanjaya now continues with his description in for Arjuna, in that in his infinite body, it can be taken as just a space for the infinite. In that infinite, you're seeing all that finite thing. So we'll just chant the shloka and then we'll just go through the meanings. Tatraikastam jagat kritsnam. Tatraikastam jagat kritsnam. Pravibhaktamanekadha. Pravibhaktamanekadha. Apashya deva devasya. Apashya deva devasya. Sharire pandavastada. Sharire pandavastada. So he says, Tatra ekastam jagat kritsnam. So that just Tatra, there, resting there, in one, the whole universe is divided into all its infinite parts. So I'm sure you can read this to one of the previous shlokas, which I'll put it up again so that you can see the connection. Apashyat Pandavaha tada sharire deva devasya. So he was then able to behead by the son of Pandu in that one body of the god of gods, Deva Devasya, Lord of Lords. He's able to see Pravibhaktam, the many divisions. So Jagat Ekastam Aparshit, Arjuna is seeing the entire universe resting in this one infinite body of the world. So the seventh shloka, basically, where he shows that fragmentation, right? So now that same thing, you can see how Arjuna is seeing that fragmentation or the fragmented parts in the body of Krishna itself. So this is the division which he's talking about. And Deva Devasya Sharire. So Deva Devasya Sharire, the body. When we say Sharira, we cannot really look at Krishna as, the 5 feet or 6 feet of Krishna's limited body. Of course, we can never, never accommodate this entire universe in that one thing, just like how we see in our atlas, the round atlas that we have sometimes in our houses. Um, we see the entire thing, right? So it's something like that. Here he is seeing this. And now the only thing is that by the Divya Chakshu, Arjuna is able to see that very same world as something totally different, which is being blessed by Deva Devasya Chakshu, which he sees the Vishwarupa. And that is, so it's almost like in that divine form of the Lord, Arjuna is really looking at the entire world, right? So you see this thing here. And I don't know, Usha will appreciate this chemistry example here, which is uh, today, this entire world, if you look at it, is nothing but from this periodic table, right? And this example, actually, I took it directly from our own book here. I found it so fascinating when Swami Chinmayananda is bringing this chemistry example to explain how ultimately this entire world is nothing but or constituted of these elements of the periodic table, right? Once we look at this periodic table, now what is really different between the elements of all this periodic table? What do you all think?
It
What is
contains all
common?
the elements in the whole world.
Right. So all these elements are there in this whole world. They have been all basically grouped in different forms or ways in order to project this fragmentation, if you will, right? But ultimately, where do they all come from? It basically comes from nothing but this proton, neutron, electron. There are only 3 of these units of the gross tanmatras, which has basically created this entire world, right? So too, what is happening out here is nothing but Arjuna has gained this special knowledge by which he is able to now see that the whole universe is nothing but in his own mind, uh, where he has fragmented them into different parts. Just like how ultimately they're nothing but this 3 things which has given rise to the matter. So I just wanted to kind of bring that thing that, wish we could see this entire world as nothing but ultimately this combination of proton, neutrons, and electrons, and then go beyond that also. So any thoughts on this?
The same way, the human body is made up of the 5 Mahabhutas,
Correct.
right? But again,
Yes.
here we see in the universal form, which is Panchikarana, RNA, which are all came together
Mm-hmm.
in a huge form or a universal form.
Mm-hmm.
So, and whereas in the periodic table we got these 3, uh, you know, this came together to form this whole set of elements.
Correct. So ultimately, see, this entire world is nothing but a combination of this proton, neutrons, electrons in some form or the other, right? So um, in our own mind, if I can think that way, that ultimately this entire world is nothing but that Ishvara's manifestation, it would be so good, So anyway, so I just wanted to bring that example from the book, which I was reading it, and I thought uh, it was so profound in taking what we learn. But again, it's the mind which creates that fragmentation, right? So up to this, up to this shloka, we now see Arjuna is like really being exposed to looking at Krishna in a different way. And, he's kind of almost in a kind of a shock. So Sanjay is painting this wonderful picture of Arjuna's reaction to this sort of an earth-shattering event. So he is like having goosebumps, and he's filled with so much of awe, so much of wonder, I would say. But once this is over, Arjuna's, psychological and physical reactions, you will now hear where how Sanjay is actually recounting how Arjuna is looking at it. Okay. One second, huh? Sorry. Yeah, Shok, I'm in a class. ततः स विस्मयाविष्टः ततः स विस्मयाविष्टः हृष्टरोमा धनञ्जयः हृष्टरोमा धनञ्जयः प्रणम्य शिरसा देवम् प्रणम्य शिरसा देवम् कृताञ्जलिरभाषत कृताञ्जलिरभाषत. So he says, so Sanjay is recounting Arjuna's um, Arjuna's reactions, in his emotions here. So he says, Tataha Saha Vismaya Avishtaha. So he's filled with this wonder, and Dhananjaya, Rishta Roma Dhananjaya. So his hair just standing on end. I mean, and sometimes we experience this too, right? When a body goes to an extreme shock or something which is so totally unexpected. So Sanjay is trying to, bring to Dhritarashtra's attention how Arjuna's reactions were. So he starts with saying that, look at him, his body is in such a shock. He's standing with his hair almost, like with all this pullarikiradu we say, right, in Tamil. And pranamya shirasa devam. He is bowing his head down to Krishna, Lord Divine, and with complete hands, he speaks these words. So here we are saying, a kind of a picture of finally Arjuna totally surrendering to that wondrous vision here. And that is, I just have a picture on here, just to show again the humility that Arjuna. So when Usha was asking about how do I get to this purity of mind, so the idea is two things. One of them, even when I'm grateful for, gratitude for whatever is happening to me in this world, to that extent, my mind gets purified, right? So here it's the gratitude plus the humility with which Arjuna is experiencing this great vision. So whenever, for all of us, what happens is sometimes when we would have accomplished something small in this world, I think, we feel so good. In many ways, sometimes that helps us actually many times even with our self-esteem, well, we are not as bad, something like that. But it is even beyond that. This, whenever something we accomplish, if I can only say that this is because of the grace of the Lord, or because there were so many different variables that Ishvara had to take out of the way so that I can achieve this. So even by changing the perspective in our mind, we should be able to get to it, right? So here, this is what is again part of this whole Divya Chakshu. Arjuna is, feeling that humility, that submission, and that is what is being reflected in this shloka, which is Pranamya Shirasa Devam Kritanjalira Bhashata. He's saying it with great reverence, with great humility, with great submission here, because his emotions, are really so much now totally under control, and he is the purity of mind again, as you see it, because those qualities are making him see the world differently. So that is why this change of perspective, you see, has a great impact on Arjuna. And let us now try to see Arjuna's reactions. Okay. Now in 15 to 25, now you will see how Arjuna's every aspect, whatever he's feeling, is really coming out here. And I'm just giving you some idea of what to expect in the next few shlokas here. You can almost look at this, you can break it down in kind of various phases, if you will, because, when we talk about also our sadhanas, right? We want to see, okay, am I really improving? When Meena was saying about, maybe we're improving by 0.1 or 0.2% or whatever. So there are different phases in which we can kind of qualify this. So in shlokas 15 to 16, we qualify this as a phase 1, which is you're looking at this cosmic vision where the Lord is shown as a cosmic person. So as it says here, the whole cosmos, including all deities, is seen within the Lord's body. And everything here is described in a static state. So you see he will show Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, and also all the other devas, everybody. So that is in phase 1, you will see in 15 and 16. So it's like a preview, a trailer to a movie or something, which this is what I'm putting out here. And then from there on, you will see how Krishna is just showing his four-armed form. And here I want to say more as Vishnu, so he's showing his Chaturbhuja. And this form is used by most devotees to worship the Lord. So in many of the temples too, you see Lord Vishnu's form as a four-armed. And of course, we'll come into more descriptions as we get into it. And from there on, after he's shown him in a static, we go into how the dynamic form of Vishwarupa in 19, where, you see a very, very, very significant dynamic form which is introduced. And then in phase 4, you see a transformation again, the transforming Vishwarupa, as we say, 20 to 25 shlokas. So here, you see that Vishwarupa shown in various forms, the dynamic, fearful, terrible, striking wonder, awe, all these things, it's almost like Krishna is taking Arjuna through a climax to such an extent that finally Arjuna says, stop, I cannot take this anymore. So up to that point, you see how this cosmic vision is going to unravel. I hope this kind of gives you an idea of what is to come in the next, 10 shlokas almost. Any questions or thoughts here?
Hari Om.
Hari Om, yes.
So in chapter 1, sloka 29, when Arjuna says, Sitanti mama gathani muhamsha parishusyati, vebadusha sharire me roma harshasya jayata.
Correct.
So look at the difference from this to the Vishwarupam. See, that time he was totally shattered, so his hair was straight, but now it is complete change.
Correct.
So
Beautiful.
I just thought,
I love it, Meena. I'm so impressed. I love the way you're comparing it to the same emotion, if you will, or
yes,
not just or the same manifestation of it, right? In his
yes,
body.
yes, total, two contradictory things. So first,
Correct.
his hair was
So that was
because
chapter
of
1,
the
shloka 29. You said Siddhanti Mama Gatrani, is it?
yes.
Okay.
Roma Harsha, yeah.
Roma Harshasya Jayate, correct. And here also same thing, right? Here he says Rishta Roma Dhananjayaha. I don't know what he calls him at that point. He definitely probably didn't call him Dhananjaya. Here he calls him Dhananjaya for a reason. So
Yes.
he's trying to recognize, he's bringing out the warrior in him now, So let's, so you will see now in this shloka 15, Arjuna is really coming out of his silence. So far, he was just experiencing all this. And you will see that these shlokas, the speed at which we are chanting is also changes. It is actually in line with the emotion that Arjuna is going through. So I just wanted to point out that change in the meter of the shlokas itself. Okay. Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna Uvacha, Pashyami Devamstava Devadehe, Pashyami Devamstava Devadehe, Sarvanstatha Bhuta Vishesha Sangan, Sarvanstatha Bhuta Vishesha Sangan, Brahmanamisham Kamalasanastam, Brahmanamisham Kamalasanastam, Rishascha Sarvan Anugramscha Divyan, Rishishcha Sarvan Anugramscha Sadivyan. So here he's saying, Pashyami Devan. I see all the gods, O Lord, in your body. Tava Deva Dehe. Pashyami, Aham Pashyami Dev. Pashyami Devan, Tava Deva Dehe. Sarvan Tatha Bhuta Vishesha Sangan. So not only do I see all the devas, but I'm also seeing all the host of beings of various classes. Again, showing that, this is again Arjuna's description here. Brahmana Isham Kamalas Asanastham. So you see, he's saying that I'm seeing Brahma and then Isham referring to Shiva, and then Kamala lotus, Asanastham referring to Vishnu. So you see, he's referring to Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara here, and all the Rishin cha Sarvan, Uragan cha Divyan. So he's seeing all the rishis as well as all the Uragan, which is the celestial serpents. So he's saying, I'm able to see all these in your body. So amazing, isn't it, that he's trying to show so much out here. So he's endorsing the comparison, first in a previous thing where, we had compared the Lord to the brilliant suns, right? So here now he's trying to, Arjuna is starting to show about the description of not only the big things, but also he's able to see that entire universe of all these beings in this world here. So I just wanted to bring some pictures here because no amount of words by itself will really convey this greatness of, or the beauty, the wonder that Arjuna is actually going through here. So in fact, in a much later shloka, you will actually come across this, he sees, going back to what Meena just mentioned, right? Siddhanti Mama Gatrani. At that point in time, you see how Arjuna was so depressed by seeing all his teachers and everyone. So, but then now you will see, I just pulled this a little earlier, the shloka, which is actually the 26th shloka, but just to show that, he will actually start to see his own teachers, Bhishma, Drona, Suta, Putrasta, Tathasa, he will see all of them and he will try to show, he comes to grip with the same emotions, what he faced earlier, now the world, how he sees it as different, as so the point about whole thing is then, what Arjuna sees by itself is not really that important, but we will actually go a little more deeper into what that means for us. How can we also develop this Divya Chakshu? How can we, in the midst of seeing everything, still be able to withdraw ourselves and recognize that what is happening is nothing but Maya and play, So I'll stop at this point. I was hoping that we'll be able to do one more shloka 16, but we will probably continue this narrative next week. Okay. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.